Have you ever seen this car before? More than likely you have not. It's a Renault Kwid, and it's, I think, objectively one of the worst cars that you can buy right now. And let me explain it to you in this video before I get blown away by this hurricane-like winds that are blowing right now. But at least I brought you to a place with a nice view. So the Renault Kwid was launched in 2015 in India, and it was introduced here in Argentina and in Latin America as a whole in 2017. I saw with my own two eyes the unit that had gone through the crash testing for the Indian market in 2015, and it was completely obliterated from the B-pillar onwards. That crash test was a complete disaster. The car got 0 stars, and it's probably one of the most unsafe cars that you could get in the Indian market. Learning from that mistake, Renault went and added 140 kilos of reinforcement to this car for the Argentine market and added 4 airbags as standard. With all those improvements, the car went from 0 stars to 3 stars. So still not a very safe car, especially considering that this was back in 2017 when Latin NCAP, which is the organization that tests cars for the Latin American market, was a lot less strict. Currently, this car would almost surely get 0 stars. I don't think that you should trust the opinion of car YouTubers like me or people who test cars in general. We usually spend only a few minutes or a few hours or at most a week with our cars and do not get to test it fully or do not get to test its reliability, for instance. But there are people who you should trust, and I got this car from one of those people. It's from a friend of mine who owns a car rental company, and I asked him, what is the worst car that you have ever had in your fleet? He didn't even take 5 seconds to answer that. He went like the Renault Kwid, it's right here. He claims this car is so bad that it's the last car he rents to his customers. In fact, he's getting rid of them very, very soon. So he told me, before I get rid of all these crappy cars, you can test drive one of them, just please don't name my car rental company. It's funny, because 2 years ago I talked to another friend who also owns a car rental company, and he said the exact same thing. He said, I bought these cars because I thought it was going to be so cheap, I was going to be able to have huge profit margins with them, but they're so crappy that I just had to get rid of them. Anyway, let's get to the point, let's talk about this car, and let me tell you why even car rental companies hate them. So I've heard people compare these cars to the old Renault 4s or Renault 12s from back in the day, in the sense that they say, sure, these cars were crappy, but so were their predecessors. And they were reliable cars that took you anywhere and you could just fix them with a screwdriver and some duct tape. That's not the case with this car. These cars are actually fragile. The guy who owns the car rental company has to replace their front suspension every 50,000 or 60,000 kilometers. That's 40,000 miles. That does not happen with any of their other cars in their fleet. So yes, rental cars get abused, but that just shows how these cars are a lot more fragile and they're not as easy or cheap to fix as their predecessors were. So reason number one why even car rental companies don't like these cars. First of all, you've only got 3 lug nuts in these 14-inch wheels. They are steelies. That means you've got whatever this is called in English. Could you let me know in the comments? So the problem is that in most cars, this thing is attached to a rim aside from being attached to the lug nuts. In this car, it is not. So this is loose, and it's loose from factory. Never mind that it's chipped there, but it happens in every single Kwid. So that means when you're rolling down a road that is uneven, or it has potholes, or it's a dirt road like this one, you constantly hear that. And it's very annoying. By the way, if you've reached this point in the video, would you mind subscribing? Having more subscribers help this channel grow a lot. So thank you very much. Let me show you just how bare bones this car is inside. I'm opening the rear door first because it's one of the lightest doors that I've ever seen. But let's go right inside. Now this car interior is as bare bones as it gets. There's no tachometer, there's only a speedo. It's manual windows, manual mirrors, a 5-speed manual gearbox, no center locking, and the only comfort equipment that you get is Bluetooth, AC, and power steering. That's it. I don't think it's fair to criticize this car for its lack of equipment, because it's a bare bones car. It's what you get. But I do think it's fair to criticize it for the quality of the materials in some parts. For instance, my car rental friend mentioned that these door handles break all the time. This unit has 110,000 kilometers, which is not that much, and my friend claims that this might be the 4th or 5th door handle for the driver's side door that he's put into this unit. Okay, it's a rental car, but these things don't happen on other vehicles. And when it comes to safety equipment, these Latin American versions have 4 airbags, 2 front airbags and 2 side airbags, and ABS. That's it. No stability control, no traction control. Under the hood, we find a 1-liter, 3-cylinder, 66 horsepower and 93 Newton meters of torque engine. It's not the most powerful engine in the world, but it's pretty much what you'd expect from a city car. It's naturally aspirated, and one of the redeeming things of these Renault Kwid is just how well it sounds. I've always said that 3-cylinder engines actually sound better than 4-cylinder engines, but we'll see that when we get to the driving part. Interior quality is dismal, to say the least. That's kind of what you expect and what's the cheapest car of its segment and the cheapest new car that you can buy in Argentina. The plastics are terrible. I've heard of people actually getting cuts with the plastic on some Kwids. I haven't found any plastic that could cut you in this unit yet, but you know, this is incredible. The interior quality is just terrible. Let's take this Renault Kwid for a spin. The drum where the key goes is absolutely worn out, even though this car has 60,000 miles, 110,000 kilometers. That's a very common fault in these Kwids, so you have to fiddle around with the key until you can get it to start. Once again, a simple dashboard without a tachometer. Now let's get out of this dirt road to actually be able to see how this car goes on the actual asphalt. The interesting thing about this car is that it doesn't give you those, slow car going fast feels that other cars in the segment give you. I've driven other cheap cars and they're really fun to drive because you feel like you're driving really, really fast, even though you're doing, like now, 60 kilometers an hour. In this car going fast, it's a bit scarier, especially with this crosswinds. I can also feel how wind is coming from outside the car. I'm on 5th gear, that's the top gear. I'm just gonna double check right now. And it's an incredible experience because the car is really loud. The steering wheel floats. I know that's a common issue with these Kwids, and it's not an enjoyable experience overall. I'm giving it all it's got. Yeah, it's not a fast car. There are 2 great things about this car. One is the sound of its engine. This is an unpopular opinion, but I think 3-cylinder engines sound much better than inline 4s. I don't know, they just sound like raspier or more aggressive. Let's listen to it. I hope you could hear it. And the second thing that I like about this car is its turning radius. I don't think I've ever driven a car that can turn such tight corners in parking lots as this car. One thing you may have noticed is that the Renault brand is a bit weird here in Latin America, because the cars that we get as Renaults are actually cars that in Europe are sold as Dacias. So instead of getting a Dacia Duster, we get a Renault Duster. Instead of getting a Dacia Logan or a Dacia Sandero, we get a Renault Logan or Renault Sandero. This car is sold as a Dacia Spring in Europe, whereas here, it's a Renault. Let's take advantage of this traffic jam to listen to a 3-cylinder engine a little bit. You can't tell me that doesn't sound better than a 4-cylinder engine. So what's most likely is that you've been watching this video from a country where you cannot get this car. Although you might be watching from a country where you can get its twin, the Dacia Spring, which is sold in the EU as an electric car, and it's essentially just as bad, but a little bit better. You should be very thankful that your first world market does not allow the sale of cars such as this, because this car wouldn't pass regulations or safety standards in the US, in Canada, in Australia, or anywhere in the European Union as is. So be very thankful that you cannot buy these cars in your market. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more content on this channel. See you next time.